All right, I've tried to start this show like 6 times now, and I feel like maybe I should just jump right in because I'm discovering quickly that I'm not very good at just starting these things without music or little radio bits and stuff like that. But if you click play on this, then you already know it's The Fringe. You probably know that I'm Mike Berquist, the host, creator, entire staff of The Fringe. I'm returning after a hiatus of since the middle of December. I don't know how many months it's been, but it's March 18th today, about 8 o'clock in the morning, Monday morning, and I figure it's time to jump back into the fray. I've been out of it for a little while now, but I'm seeing the world around me, and it's still annoying me, and there are a lot of problems out there that I still feel like I need to rant about, sometimes rave about, but that's rare. And yeah, I don't know. It was weird it was weird going from having a radio show for 4 years to having nothing. I mean, it was my own choice completely, but it's time now for me to get back into broadcasting a little bit, for the sake of my own mental health, if nothing else. So basically, The Fringe was a sort of general kind of show. It didn't fall neatly into any particular category. It was often described incorrectly by people I worked with to other people who hadn't listened before. On this show, I talk about stuff that catches my eye, that interests me, that I think I have something to say, or I have something I have to say about it, or there's something I think, or maybe there's a question I want to pose, something rhetorical. I would look at politics, pop culture, sort of entertainment kind of stuff, anything going on in the news, and then, of course, sort of whacked out news stories that typically took place in Florida. That was just, it wasn't like I was looking for Florida stories, but when you see a headline like somebody's microwaving pee in the microwave at the 7-Eleven, those stories would typically take place in Florida, as it turns out, to no great surprise of anyone, I would assume. But that was kind of what my show was about. It was like sort of looser, more of a kind of hangout thing. I would have co-hosts here and there. I've since had a bizarre falling out with one of the co-hosts, which I'm not going to get into here. As far as I'm concerned, it's completely over. I know that person has probably been telling their side of the story, which is wildly incorrect, but that's not what this is about. Basically, I'm solo here. This podcast is solo. I'm not bringing in other personalities unless I really feel like I should. This is not going to be like the radio show anymore. That's the point of this soft reboot, I guess, of The Fringe. I'm considering putting out 2 a week. Maybe one on Monday and then one later in the week. And I think I'm going to split them by topics generally. You're going to get a red version and a blue version, just like childhood. And if you're around my age, you know what I'm talking about. If you have any attachment to sort of pop culture with the youth, you know what red version, blue version is a reference to. So one episode is going to be dominantly political, and then the other one is going to be more of sort of a general talk kind of thing. This one, you lucky listeners, is going to be dominantly political, because that's the stuff I'm sort of shouting about most of the time these days. So that's going to be the first one we do here. I might start cursing. I'm not sure. I won't threaten you with such things, but yeah, so I figure I might do about an hour for each episode, but we'll see how it goes and everything like that. I want to be transparent with the audience. So yeah. So this will be the first episode of the soft reboot. Keep the name The Fringe, I guess. Originally at the radio station, when they were asking me to come up with the name for the show, I just wanted to call it the Mike Berquist Show, because it was like, why would I call it something different than that? I want people to know my name because I'm the host of the show. I'm the creator of the content for the show. I would like my name attached to it so people know who it is. Also, the Mike Berquist Show would be the most appropriate title for the show, considering the topics varied wildly. However, my bosses decided that every show needed like a pun or a play on words title or something odd. So there were a lot of shows like that. And they were like, you got to come up with a wacky name for your show. And I was like, I really don't want to, because it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But whatever. So I end up with this name, The Fringe. My dad helped me pick it out, I guess, or maybe he came up with it and I ran with it. And so I figure I might as well just keep the name. At this point, it's too late. But yeah. So, this is like my 5 or 6 minute introduction here now. I don't know how much I've really explained to you, but this is going to be the politics first episode, I guess. And I do have several topics prepared. I did an episode maybe 2 weeks ago, and it was just way too dry. And I was like, I can't put this out because I don't know how many people would find this interesting. What I had done was, if I still have my notes here, I talked quite a bit about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and don't worry, she's going to be a recurring figure in these podcasts, the political ones. But I'm not going to cover her the way the news does, where they think every single fart that comes out of her dumb ass is worthy of reporting on. But, yeah, that's not going to be how it is here. So I talked a little bit about her, about how this appropriately titled PAC, the Swamp PAC, that was aligned with her, gave her boyfriend $6,000. There's maybe some controversy about why. So I talked a little bit about that. I talked about the Amazon Center in Queens a little bit, I believe, and how just completely nearsighted or short-sighted, and just absolutely stupid that move was to not allow the Amazon Center in Queens, New York. If you don't ask me, ask the business owners, the people who are going to be directly fucked by that decision. So I talked a little bit about that. And I went line by line through the new Green Deal. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is, let's call it controversial. Her controversial bill. I went line by line through it because I thought that would be important. It was interesting to see what was in there, and more specifically, what was not in there. And but the whole thing is, it was a little long and it was way too dry. There wouldn't be a lot of people interested in what every single word of the new Green Deal is. So maybe I'll summarize that a little later, or maybe I'll summarize it now a little bit. My takeaway from the new Green Deal, which I read, as I've said, was that it is sort of the wish list of a child. There's nothing really substantive in it at all. It's a wish list, really. It's a very, very expensive wish list. She cites data from studies that I don't know how widely available the studies are. In fairness, I did not try to find those studies. I just looked at the data she presented from the studies, and then I researched that data on my own, found a liberal site that has climate change statistics there, and the information from the climate change statistics from that pretty highly regarded website did not match the statistics that she put in her bill when it came to climate change. So there's glaring inaccuracies in the bill. It's a wish list with no actual plan of implementation for any of these things that she wants. And there's no specific price tag either. But if you look at it, it's basically, let's build a new country. I mean, it's not that crazy, but it doesn't make sense, the bill. It's very, very idealistic, and very little of it is practical. It almost seems like a bill designed to mislead the American people into thinking that the Republicans don't care about the future, which is ridiculous. But that's the game now, and you can see that that's the game in Washington because that's what they're doing for the past couple of months. each side is passing a ridiculously stupid bill so that the other side goes, that's very stupid, we're not going to sign that. And then they can go, oh, look at them, they believe babies should be killed. Or they go, oh, look at him, they think white supremacy is good. And none of that is true. All they're doing is trying to mislead the stupid. And this show, hopefully, will shine a light on those, not incidents, but those actions, I suppose, of these people. I don't want you all to be misled. I personally am tired of being misled. So I'm reading the bills now, and I'm trying to present you all with some, actual substance behind what's going on out there. You can't just watch the news. There was a Mark Twain quote that I had sort of incorrectly attributed to Denzel Washington for quite some time. I had said it on the air, too. It's the idea that if you read the news, you're misinformed. If you don't read the news, you're uninformed. I actually think if you swap those lines, that's the correct sort of order that quote goes in. I thought it was Denzel Washington because I saw him say it once. And turns out it was Mark Twain. And that's what happens, folks, when you don't follow up with your research. When you hear something from somebody and you go, that's good, and then, you should always doubt. I think that's the rule of thumb now in the world, is that you shouldn't believe any single thing that you hear unless you double check. It's the safest way to go. It shouldn't be, but human beings are awful, and we lie all the time. And we, misconstrue things and mislead for our own ends. I kind of lost the beginning of the sentence, so I don't know if the end made any sense at all. But I guess we'll see when I listen back. Anyway, so in the earlier show, I touched on the Oscars very briefly. About mostly the big takeaway from the Oscars for me. And the Oscars isn't important anymore. It wasn't important the day after they happened. Or the day of, for that matter, if we're going to be honest about it. But the weird takeaway, and the only reason I bring it up is because it really kind of does also expose sort of the thought process behind, I guess, the average American. If you looked at Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or just watched the Oscars or just anything surrounding it, particularly the movie, what was that one called? Where, A Star is Born. A Star is Born, right? Yeah, the Lady Gaga, Bradley Cooper one. If you're familiar with anything surrounding that movie, then you're probably familiar with this already. But to me, it's disturbing because it shows how completely out of fucking touch people are. There is a wild call for Bradley Cooper to cheat on his girlfriend or wife, whoever he happens to be with right now, to cheat on her with Lady Gaga. Because people want the movie to be real. They want the movie relationship to be in real life. And that is fucking crazy. So, it just kind of shows you where people are at, that there is this odd disconnect between what they see in the world and how they interpret it, where it seems like fantasy is more important than reality. And that is pervasive in all aspects of society right now, and it's scary. That is a very scary situation because a lot of those people are the kind of people who vote. Those kinds of people should not. That's one thing that I've sort of, if I'm going to sort of introduce some of my political ideas so you kind of get an idea of where my base is, I have more recently kind of fallen into the idea that we should have some sort of testing for citizens before they vote. I don't think being a citizen of the country automatically allows you to vote. I know that that's what the Constitution says, but I think that part of the Constitution should be amended. I think there should be testing of voters. And I'm not saying, this is where they've tried testing before, but they've done it for other reasons. It's more been used for sort of institutional racism and, sort of oppressive tactics. That's not what I'm looking to do here. I'm looking to follow the Alexis de Tocqueville sort of idea that if you allow everyone to vote, you inevitably end up with a government steeped in mediocrity. And I think it's time for that practice to end. I don't know if you've walked down the street and just heard somebody talking about politics, or just been in an area, a waiting room maybe, or the lobby of something. You've heard somebody quietly discussing politics, maybe on the train. But those people are often completely incorrect with what they're talking about. And they have the exact same amount of voting right as somebody who knows what they're talking about. So you inevitably find this middle ground of half truth, half fiction. And that's what our government is. And I'm not saying like half and half as in the parties. I'm just saying that it's, it's bad now. It's mediocre because that's what we allowed it to become. That's what we designed it to become. Accidentally, of course, but that's the reality of the situation now. So I believe that there should be some sort of standardized testing for, maybe not standardized, actually, because that's when you're going to get into tricky situations. I think some sort of system where the candidates each submit questions about their policies and their platforms, which would then be vetted by some kind of committee, local committees or whatever. I don't know how you would set the committees up. That's not really very important at this stage of the idea. But the committees would vet the questions that the candidates submitted. If you want to vote in an election, you have to take the quick questionnaire. You have to score. I don't know if you have to score perfectly, but you would have to pass for sure. You can't get them all wrong and then still vote. Or maybe if you get 100, that counts as one full vote. But if you get, depending on how many questions you get wrong, that's what each question, if there's 10 questions, each question is worth 10% of your final vote. So if you get 5 questions wrong on the test of 10 questions, your vote is worth half a vote. And I think that would be that'd be a much better system, because then we would have a much more accurate sort of, government. But, I'm idealistic like that sometimes. So I think there should be that. I don't think that the average American citizen should be allowed to vote. That's just me. This doesn't come from any sort of prejudicial thing. You're not going to find a specific group to say that I'm targeting, because I'm not. It's basically just people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about, who also think that they should have a voice when it comes to policy decisions. That is bizarre. So I think that should end. And if that sounds overly conservative, how about I hit you with this? That sounds overly liberal. I think every single drug should be legal. I think they should all be legalized in this country. And if you think that's a naive or crazy thing to say, I ask you to look into this guy named Johan Hari. Johan Hari has a wealth of information and stories about sort of the way that drugs interact with various cultures, and then sort of how those cultures typically punish drug users instead of addressing the actual things. He told a story on Joe Rogan about, I listened to it too long ago now. I don't remember specifically. But if you look him up, look up his more recent Joe Rogan thing. He talks about a particular country in Europe, I believe, that legalized heroin. And how by legalizing heroin, the amount of heroin users dropped significantly. So did crime, and street prostitution went away altogether. So, legalize all the drugs. Do it smart. Don't sell heroin in a bodega, obviously. But, there are ways to do it. So, I guess my point by bringing those things up is I'm not a conservative, and I'm definitely not a liberal. I fall maybe somewhere in the middle. I'm not too interested in being on that spectrum at all. I just want to be my own person with my own ideas. Party think is dangerous. Group think is dangerous. So I'm trying to stay away from all that kind of shit. And I'm just going to tell you basically what I think. And I want to be open with where I get my information from. And, sort of my interpretations of things. So now that I've sort of done a 20-minute, more or less, intro into kind of what the political sort of thing is going to be here. And trust me, I know a lot of people mislabel me as a conservative because I don't know exactly why. I guess I was conservative for a while in my teenage years. I was pretty conservative, pretty militantly Catholic. I was very against alcohol and drugs, all kinds of shit, all kinds of craziness. And then I grew up. I started looking at the world for what it really is, and a lot of my views changed. So I would not consider myself a conservative. I wouldn't even particularly consider myself all that Catholic anymore. But because I was raised Catholic, I feel a tremendous amount of guilt even uttering that sentence. No, I lean more towards Buddhism now. I lean more towards libertarianism, or if you have to put me on the political spectrum, it's closest to libertarianism. My idea is basically do whatever you want, just don't bother people. That's the gist of it, and I feel like that's the most common sense sort of view that you can have. But I've had people sort of look at me like I'm an idiot for leaning libertarian. But that person was a liberal who liked to yell that grab him by the pussy line because they thought that was just tremendous gold and really the smoking gun that was going to take down our president. Yeah, that didn't really work out how they all thought it was going to. But I digress. I also, I will just state for the record that I did vote for Donald Trump, and I am, at this moment, probably leaning towards voting for him because of how fucking abysmal the Democratic candidates are. Except Tulsi Gabbard. I like Tulsi Gabbard. Let me actually find the Democratic list of candidates, and I'll tell you kind of who I like. Let's see. Democratic candidates 2020. Let's just have a look here. I'll grab this from the Chicago Tribune as of 4 days ago, campaign 2020. The list of Democratic presidential candidates who want to topple Trump. And just because I am a Trump supporter does not mean I am aligned with everything that he says and thinks. That's not the case, and that's a weird place that we've gotten to in this country where liking certain things about people is instantly sort of turned into, and falsely so, sort of condoning every part of the person. And that's ridiculous. And again, that's sort of like not prejudicial, not bigoted. Those aren't the right terms, but there's a incorrect preconceived notion that a lot of people have about other people who don't think everything that they do. Just because somebody doesn't think everything that you do doesn't mean that everything they think is bad or that they are aligned with the worst of the worst people. It doesn't work like that. This is the real fucking world. So, and sorry for all the cursing, but I couldn't curse on radio for 4 years, and some of these things require it because I'm angry. I'm angry about all of it. I'm passionate. And I don't want anybody to make assumptions about me when I can just very openly explain certain things. So I do like Trump, but there are things about Trump that I don't like. But I think the pros of Donald Trump far outweigh any of the cons because a lot of the cons are language-based, and it's just oversensitive people reacting from an emotional place about things that really don't matter in the grand scheme of human history. Language is not a fucking harsh weapon. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me used to be like a mantra in the Western world. And now I don't know what happened. Now it's the exact opposite. So yeah. So my point was basically, I'm not an unconditional supporter of any politician. That's the thing I really want to get out there. I support politicians conditionally. If they violate those conditions, I will no longer support them. And that's where I'm at with that. So let's get into this thing about the Democratic presidential candidates. We'll take a look at who's running right now. There's people still sort of filing in, I believe. So let's just go point by point here. Excuse me. So there's a list of people not running. That's not interesting. There's Beto O'Rourke. I want to circle back to him. Then we got John Hickenlooper. If you've never heard of him before, you're not alone. Former Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper said he's running for president, casting himself as a can-do uniter who is used to overcoming adversity and accomplishing liberal goals in a politically divided state. He's 66. He says he's running for president because we need dreamers in Washington, but we also need to get things done. He says, I've proven again and again I can bring people together to produce the progressive change Washington has failed to deliver. Now, that doesn't say a whole hell of a lot about what he actually believes, but that's because we're getting this from a news report. And sort of the look of someone or the idea of someone is a lot more important these days than the actual substance of the person. So John Hickenlooper, probably not going to get the nom. And I'm going to say that because who is he? He's not popular enough. And it's the biggest popularity contest we have in America is the race for the presidency. He's not popular enough. He's not going to win. We got Governor Jay Inslee. This starts off with the relatively unknown governor of Washington, so that's a bad start. Joining the field, he joined it March 1st, pledging to make climate change the primary issue in his campaign. He is 68 years old, the first governor to enter the Democratic contest. He has a long political resume, but lacks name recognition outside of the Pacific Northwest. So that's another one who's going to get knocked out early. Now we got Bernie Sanders. A lot of people are in my age group. I'm 26 as of the recording of this. Bernie Sanders is a very attractive figure to people in my age group, and I'm trying to understand why that would be other than just complete ignorance. It can't just be ignorance, can it? An entire generation they just don't understand socialism? How could that be possible? I mean, I know that the education in this system is fundamentally in shambles, but they still taught socialism in school. So Bernie Sanders, for anybody who doesn't remember, he ran in 2016 when he was 1,000 years old. So he'll be running when he's 1,004 years old now. He announced February 19th that he's running for president in 2020. He's actually 77. So here's what he said in his email to supporters. Our campaign is not only about defeating Donald Trump. Our campaign is about transforming our country and creating a government based on the principles of economic, social, racial, and environmental justice. Now, social and racial justice in this country has never been higher than it already is right now. That's one. Environmental justice, nobody knows what the truth is yet because there's way too many privately funded studies about the environment and sort of ecological interactions and things like that. Nobody has any idea what's really going on. Go outside, go to the store, ask the first person you see if global warming is real. If they say yes, ask them why. They're not going to know. If they say no, ask them why. They're not going to know. So this climate change thing, I lean towards believing that climate change is real. I buy into these documentaries and these things. They show you video of things happening and they make a connection. I don't know how clear the connection is, but it seems convincing to me. But I am by no means ready to take a firm stance on climate change one way or the other. I just don't know enough about it, and I'm going to be honest about that. I don't. So I'm going to go towards that. So, but because nobody knows, these politicians are sort of running with, or at least the Democrats are running with this climate change thing. And again, who knows where the facts are coming from. Like I said earlier, the Green New Deal or the New Green Deal, whatever nonsense she's calling that waste of paper, it's naive. It's naive and the science isn't there. So I don't know. I want to follow the science. I don't care which direction the science points in. Just tell me where it's pointing. But be honest. And that's where I'll probably land with the climate change thing. So Bernie Sanders is running on that. He's running on social and racial problems, which I don't know if it's senility or what, if he's having flashbacks to the 70s, the 60s, and then any time in human history before that. But those things aren't really happening too much anymore. And then, what was the other one? Economics. And Bernie Sanders is a social democrat, which means he's a socialist, but he's naming it something that's a little more friendly to the palate. It's a little more easy to digest for some of those liberals who aren't ready to make the leap into complete lunacy just yet. Socialism, for anyone who doesn't know, is perhaps the most failed system of running a country in the history of the earth. There have been monarchies and dictatorships that have been more productive than socialist regimes. Then again, if you actually look at sort of the horseshoe theory of all that stuff, socialism and fascism end up on the same end of the spectrum at the end of the day. So, I mean, I was listening to some Jordan Peterson thing not too long ago, and he sort of pretty aptly said it by socialism has existed in almost every region of the earth, every kind of climate, every sort of culture, different political systems, different histories, just like the what's it called? The variables are different in all of these different systems where they try to implement socialism, and yet it catastrophically fails in any environment you put it into. He said he's tired of this great experiment. Personally, I'm tired of it too. I think a lot of people are tired of hearing about socialism. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's nice on paper. I know that Democrats and liberals want to believe the best in people, but people fucking suck. People are terrible. Nobody does anything unless there's something in it for them. That's how we're wired. That's part of our evolutionary survival instinct. You can't just wish that away. It's there. Selfishness pervades everything. And socialism and selfishness cannot coexist. They cannot. They are at odds with each other. That's the basics. So the idea of trying to implement that again is bizarre. And the fact that it's being eaten up by young people is even scarier. How could this have happened? Was no one else paying attention in history? Did nobody take a fucking economics class once in their life? Does nobody read the news or books? What's happening to this world? So Bernie Sanders, the only nice takeaway about Bernie Sanders is he is absolutely going to split the vote on the Democratic ticket. If you are a Democrat and you really are passionate about defeating Donald Trump in 2020, you better make it your mission to discredit Bernie Sanders. Because Bernie Sanders is going to fuck you all sideways in this next election just with his presence. He's taking the youth vote, the youths that live in these, and it's typically gentrified areas. They're white, hipster, liberal youth. He's taking all of that vote. Keep that in mind. He's taking all of that. Now, if you think there are enough Democrat or liberal boomers that can sort of defeat or sort of, you think you have the majority of the vote, you're very sadly mistaken. The millennials overtook the population of the boomers, I think, a few years ago, and that's just going up. So Bernie Sanders is a tremendous threat to the Democratic Party in 2020. And it's important if you're a Democrat and you really care, it's important to know that now and to start thinking about how you can educate the younger people. You need to educate them because they obviously don't know what they're talking about. And it's going to completely screw your party in 2020. So, I mean, and if he does, don't bitch. Don't bitch about it. Because it was, I don't know. I'm getting all crazy here. Now we got Senator Amy Klobuchar. I've heard her name a couple of times. Minnesota senator positioned herself as the most prominent Midwestern candidate in the field as she announced her candidacy Sunday, February 10th in a snowy park along the Mississippi River with the Minneapolis skyline in the background. Jesus, Chicago Tribune. That's a little purpley, that prose, for what we're trying to do here, which is just the facts, please. Just the facts, ma'am. How about a little dragnet with the Chicago Tribune? Just the facts. All right. Klobuchar made the announcement after several stories about her alleged mistreatment of Capitol Hill staff put a dent in her Minnesota nice reputation. All right, so there's nothing. This website doesn't seem to be taking a deep dive on anybody except Bernie Sanders or other people who are already known. So Amy Klobuchar, I don't know. It doesn't say what her policies are here. Maybe we'll look at that another time. If she starts to gain any sort of traction, which I doubt it, because that the Democrat field is so stacked with household names that if you're not one, this is pretty much not your year to run. You need to build up some kind of reputation. And the way that they seem to do it in Washington is by doing the most negative things that they can for attention. So until she does some negative things, we're probably not going to know about her. And then she'll be elected because that's how we reward bad behavior in this country. We promote them to the highest positions possible. So we got Senator Elizabeth Warren. The fact that she is even still keeping her name in the race is, I don't know if it's brave or just a testament to stupidity. But she's a Massachusetts senator, of course. First prominent candidate to dip a toe in the race. She sent her stuff out on New Year's Eve. Remember, she popped the champagne or wine, or she did something. It was her husband. They were sitting in the kitchen. It came across. No, it was a beer. It was a beer. That's why it was so weird, because she was trying hard to seem like an everyday worker, and nothing about her indicates that whatsoever. So let's see. Progressive candidate's initial move came 2 months after a widely criticized decision to release a DNA test to prove her claim to Native American heritage, a topic Trump has routinely used to attack her, and rightly so. If you're not an ethnicity and you're using that ethnicity to gain special privileges in society, you deserve to be mocked until you're dead. I'm not saying the mockery should kill you, but you should be mocked until your life just ends from natural causes. That's what I'm trying to say. Can you imagine if anyone else did that? If Donald Trump claimed to be Native American and turned out he wasn't? Can you imagine the outrage there would be? And there is essentially none, at least on the side of the party that's for tolerance and unity and progressive ideals and language policing and the idea that identity politics is more important than facts. Specifically because it is the party of identity politics, it's bizarre that there's no blowback for the white woman claiming to be Native American in order to get special privileges. So she formally announced her candidacy at a rally in Lawrence, Massachusetts, after a series of stops with some big turnout in states like Iowa. This website doesn't show the application where she cites Native American as her race, which is a shame. That's a missed opportunity on their part. Now we got another candidate, Senator Cory Booker. He was former mayor of Newark. I remember learning kind of about him when I was sort of exploring The Wire, because somebody said that the real life version of The Wire is this documentary series called, I believe it's called Brick City, about Newark, and it was about drug dealers, drug users, the police trying to get a hold on the situation, and the politicians also trying to figure out what to do. Basically like The Wire, but condensed into a very small actual documentary. So Cory Booker, I had a sort of, I don't know if admiration is the right word. Maybe it is. Maybe I admired him a little bit because he seemed to be working really hard to turn around a bad situation in Newark. And from what I had heard, he had largely succeeded. So now it's saying that he's a centrist. His announcement focused on unity and pride in America in an era marked by bitter political polarization. Now, how do you have unity and pride? I guess pride in the group. But then if you have pride in your unified group, anyone who is not in the group is someone that you're not proud of. It's somebody that you're going to see against you. I don't know. These ideas, you be very, very, very careful of anybody calling for unity who doesn't have a very tolerant view of people who oppose their opinions with their own opinions. Does that make sense? I hope it does. If it doesn't, rewind, listen to that line again. So Cory Booker, I don't know. I didn't care for how he handled himself during the Kavanaugh hearings. I thought that he had kind of made an ass of himself. But whatever. So there's that. He's in the race now. We got Mayor Pete Buttigieg. I don't know how to say his name. He should change it. Who wants President Buttigieg? I certainly don't. Just on name alone. So he's the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, home of the University of Notre Dame. I guess just South Bend, Indiana is the home of Notre Dame. I don't know why they would include that in here. But he announced he's forming an exploratory committee in January. So he's 37, which is a few years older than the age requirement, which is 35. So maybe I'll run. Maybe I'll run in 9 years. That'd be something. He's a former Rhodes Scholar, which doesn't mean shit anymore thanks to the college admissions scandal, which we'll touch on in a little while. He's a veteran of the war in Afghanistan, which means he is a stand-up guy. First openly gay nominee from a major party, which, while that's pretty cool, everybody loves, you know what? Diversity is cool, but it's cool when it happens naturally. If he's the best man for the job and he's gay, that's great. We have our first gay president, and he earned his way to being there. You don't want to ride your identity to the top of anything, because that's not satisfying. And I feel like this guy would probably agree with me on that. He probably wouldn't want to be elected just because he is from a minority group, because in a way that's pretty condescending, and it's pretty reductive of that candidate's actual policies and the actual work that they've done to get into what they're trying to get into. So, I don't know. I mean, he seems, from the Rhodes Scholar, veteran, openly gay, he seems like he checks a lot of boxes for a lot of different people. He ran unsuccessfully in 2017 for chairman of the Democratic National Committee. Now, anybody who didn't end up the chair of the Democratic National Committee is probably a decent person. If you did end up as the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, and that goes for the Republican side too. I know I'm hitting the Democrats pretty hard right now, but the Republicans, anybody who's the chairman of a committee in either party is probably a pretty conniving, sneaky psychopath, in my opinion. And of course, this is my opinion because this is my show. So now we got Senator Kamala Harris. And I have a lot to say about Kamala Harris because I think that she is one of the worst people I have ever seen in our government. She's very bad. She's absolutely one of the worst in my lifetime. I know that for sure. I'd say I don't know who the worst politician in our country of all time has been. Joseph McCarthy would have to be in the conversation. And I wouldn't put Kamala Harris up there with McCarthy, but she is... I don't think she should be given any more power than she already has. I think, if anything, we should be slowly taking it away from her. Now, she's a first-term senator from California. She was the former attorney general. We'll get to that rise to fame in a moment. Entered the race on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. If successful, she would be the first African-American woman to win the nomination. Again, we should not be voting based on the identity of a person. We should be... I mean, let's just take a page from Dr. King's book. You know, his actual book, right? We're not supposed to be judging based on outer appearances. We're supposed to be judging by the content of character. And we've lost sight of that again in this country. And anytime anybody wants to talk about it, the word racism is bandied around like it's just, it's just like it's calling someone a jerk. That word is a lot more, I don't know. It's crazy, though. Everybody wants to have the conversation, but everybody's too fucking scared. And rightly so, because there's a lot of people out there trying to nitpick the conversation at every turn. So we've got Kamala Harris here. She bypassed the exploratory committee, described, or during a recent TV appearance to promote her new book, The Truths We Hold, she described Washington as a hot mess, saying she was raised to fix problems. Now, here's the thing about Kamala Harris. Basically, everything in that little thing said everything you need to know about her. She was... Oh, you know what? Maybe not, actually. Maybe not. Maybe I just misinterpreted that. Yeah, I misinterpreted that for a moment. But my criticism of Kamala Harris is still valid. And I will... Let me just get all the facts in front of me. I'm a big facts man. And I think everyone should be. I think that's weird that, being somebody who appreciates facts over opinion is becoming sort of a minority in this country. Isn't that strange? Let's go to Kamala Harris, and we got to specifically go to her, would it be under personal life? No, not personal life. We're trying to get to how she became a notable person. And you're not going to like what I have to say, but I'm going to say it because it's true. Let me find it here. What the hell is it? Okay, so let's try to find it from something that's not foxnews.com or redstate.com. Maybe the Daily What? No, I don't know. I don't know where to go. I don't know what news sources are to be trusted anymore. I really don't. Let's just go to Fox News and keep a grain of sand. Or a grain of sand. Take it with a grain of salt. Jesus, what the hell am I talking about? Okay, so basically what happened with Kamala Harris is it was Willie Brown. It was Mayor Willie Brown, former San Francisco mayor. He had an extramarital relationship with Kamala Harris over 20 years ago. So he has admitted to influencing her career by appointing her to 2 different state commissions while he was the California Assembly Speaker. And he did this because he was her mistress. I believe she was, 25 years his junior or something. So she was a young mistress for this politician. She was his mistress. He appointed her to 2 state commissions. He influenced her career. And he says he certainly helped her with her first race for district attorney in San Francisco. He says he also helped the careers of other prominent California Democrats, such as U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Governor Gavin Newsom, and U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein. Here's the difference. He wasn't sleeping with them. Here it is. The difference is that Harris is the only one who, after I helped her, sent word that I would be indicted if I so much as jaywalked while she was DA, Brown wrote. That's politics for you. Is it politics for you, or is she just a really bad person? She slept her way into a career and then decided to basically hit the guy who got her where she was going. Now, here's what I'm going to say, and people aren't going to like this, and I'm going to say it anyways because this is pretty much the truth. I think that America does deserve a female president eventually. Again, I would rather it be that she's elected because her policies are good, because she's the right woman for the job, not just because she's a woman. Again, I don't think a woman candidate would want to be elected just because she's a woman. That's pretty condescending. It's demeaning. Nobody would want to be elected based on a physical trait. That's bizarre. Why would you want that? And if you do want that, you're obviously not the right person for the job. You're not there for the right reason. So, what I want to say with this is, America deserves a female president, a first female president. But do you really want your first female president to be somebody who slept their way into politics? Is that the role model you want for your daughters? No. That would be an unequivocal no. She uses people. She's the one who leaked Christine Blasey Ford's identity to the press and created that giant Kavanaugh clusterfuck that we had to watch for like a month. That Christine Blasey Ford thing, Senator Lindsey Graham got up during that. I remember I was watching it live when it happened. Lindsey Graham, he said, there's only 3 people that could have brought Christine Blasey Ford's name out, in effect doxing her, where she then starts to receive threats. Her family is suddenly under scrutiny. Her entire life is being looked at by fucking idiots like me, just sitting from the outside going, that's interesting. No, it's not interesting. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. And it happened that way because of Kamala Harris. Now, Lindsey Graham got up and he said there's only 3 people or groups that could have released her information, because they were the only 3 that knew who she was prior to everyone else. And those 3 people were Dianne Feinstein, who Lindsey Graham said he's worked with Dianne Feinstein for many years. He knows she's a good person. He knows the kind of politician she is. He knows that she would not do something like that. The second one would be Christine Blasey Ford's legal team. And what would their incentive be for leaking the identity of their client? There's none. And the only other person it could have been was Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris, who is using people to get into politics, who is publishing books basically for attention. Let's put it out there. If a politician writes a book while they're in office, they're doing it for attention. They're not doing it because they suddenly feel literary passion flowing through their veins. That's not what's happening. So she is very careful with she's basically proven that she's a sociopath. She is incapable of true empathy. She's very good at seeming like the rest of us, but that's what psychopaths and sociopaths do. So I think that she is a really awful, potentially dangerous person for the country. And so I'm going to say as much as I can, try to influence as many people as I can to really take a hard look at her before considering voting for her. And I want you to look back on this podcast also once the debates get going. Once they start attacking each other, I want you to look back and go, wow, he even said it there, that Kamala Harris is a bad person, that she uses people, that she uses dirty tricks on people to try to get herself to look good or put herself in a light where she can then capitalize on the attention to further her own political career. And I know a lot of politicians do that, but they're not so fucking obvious about it. So that's part of it too, is that she's not even ashamed. It's weird. I don't know. I really don't like her. And I think she's one of those people that, sort of took shortcuts, cut corners to get where she wanted to go. So, and she's a smart woman. She's college educated. She could have done these things on her own if she wanted to, but she didn't. She used other people. That's the reality. That's true. And if you think it's bad, if you don't like what I've said, if you have a problem with the language, go fuck yourself. I'm not here to make you feel better about yourself or to coddle your need for niceness. No. Kamala Harris is a bag of shit. I'm going to tell everyone. So, yeah. What else we got here? Yeah, the former mayor also connected Harris with campaign donors, which helped her outrace her opponent for San Francisco district attorney. Brown's involvement in her election raised questions as to how Harris would remain impartial given his enormous political clout. So, yeah. They broke up in 1995 but remained political allies somehow. In Saturday's column, Brown said Harris is riding a buzz wave the likes of which we haven't seen in years. Fox News contacted Harris' office for a response to Brown's claims but did not receive a response, which is a response. For the past decade or so, Brown has reportedly been linked with Sonia Molodetskaya, a Russian refugee and socialite. He is said to be separated from wife Blanche Vitero, whom he married in 1958. Brown and Vitero have 3 children, while Brown also fathered a child in 2001 with his former fundraiser, Carolyn Carpenetti, according to the Chronicle. So, what a tangled web over there with Kamala Harris. I'd say steer clear of that. Who needs that? The Democrats are already fighting an uphill battle. Don't make it harder on yourselves. Next candidate we got is Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. She's a New York Democrat. So she announced an exploratory committee on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, a late-night program that masquerades as news and sadly is believed to be news by quite a few Americans, which, again, lends credence to my belief that there should be some kind of a test before you're allowed to vote. Gillibrand was appointed to fill Hillary Clinton's Senate seat in 2009 and was reelected in November. We got Julian Castro or Julian Castro. I feel like I've heard both. Former mayor of San Antonio, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under Barack Obama. First Latino to enter the race. Again, that should not be a focal point of his campaign, but this is America, and identity is more important than facts. I'm going to keep repeating that until everyone's sick and tired of it, as much as I am sick and tired of that being the reality. The first Latino to enter the race, he made immigration the focus of his announcement, attacking Trump's policies and his push for a border wall. And that's something people need to get through their heads. Donald Trump is not the person who decided children were going to be separated from their parents at the border. That was decided by both parties in 2002. So enough. I think it was 2002. It was 2002 or 2001, 2003. It was early. It was during the Bush administration. It might have even been tail end Clinton, but I don't think it was. We've got Representative Tulsi Gabbard here, Hawaii Democrat, announced on CNN's The Van Jones Show on January 11th that she would run for the White House, listing criminal justice reform, climate change, and health care as issues she would want to solve. Now, I am only a little bit familiar with her, but she has really impressed me with sort of her background and the way she conducts herself. She comes off very presidential when she speaks, and the way just the way that she interacts with people that's the kind of person you look at and you go, that's a leader. Doesn't matter race, ethnicity, gender, none of that matters. You know leadership when you see it, and she has it. She's a Hawaii Democrat dealing with the volcano. I think one of her districts was actually affected by the volcano stuff. So I don't know how it wouldn't be. The entire district is a volcano. So criminal justice reform is a very, very important issue. It's something that does get overlooked a lot. And, the Trump administration is already taking big strides. Hold on one sec. The Trump administration is taking big strides, as I was saying, with criminal justice reform. They're starting to take a look at previous marijuana convictions and people serving long periods of time for something that is pretty much no longer illegal where they're from. So we also have the private prison system, which is just completely broken. The government-funded prisons aren't that much better, which is why we had to enact private prisons to begin with. So criminal justice reform is very important because we've gotten away from rehabilitation in this country, if it ever existed to begin with, and turned it into caging people like animals as punishment, which is not what a prison is supposed to be. It's supposed to be partly keeping them separate from society, but it is also supposed to rehabilitate them so that they can function in society without deviant behaviors. That part has been ignored for an incredible amount of time. So, criminal justice reform, I'm all for it. I wish I would hear more people talking about that. Climate change, again, it depends on who you're listening to. The facts change from day to day, which means they're not facts. It means there's a lot of opinions and a lot of theories going around out there, and there's a lot of money being funneled into theories, into I think it might be. Here's $1 billion. Make sure it isn't. That's kind of what that's my fear with the climate change kind of stuff. And then healthcare also does need to be fixed because both parties broke it. They did it together. They were having a tug of war over healthcare, and it split down the middle. And now no one can play with it because it's broken. So, yeah, I would love for that to be solved. She's a military vet, I believe. She breaks from sort of the political line. And what I mean by the political line is it's not a party line. It's both sides of the aisle. There are certain issues that on both sides of the aisle, they are unwilling to have a discussion about a differing opinion. One of those major things is Israel, but we're not talking about that right now. We can talk about that when we talk about Minnesota Representative Ilhan Omar, which this podcast is going on for a while now. I don't know if I'm going to have time today, but I lost my train of thought. But Tulsi Gabbard basically is, one of the other things is military engagement. Tulsi Gabbard doesn't think that we should be in certain Middle Eastern places. And she says that because she's seen it firsthand. Like I said, she's a veteran. She's seen these places. She's in the know when it comes to military things. She knows what happens when you infiltrate other countries' governments. She knows what kind of damage that does and all that kind of stuff. And so she's sort of for not being involved in Syria anymore, which there is a case to be made for that. Again, it's another very, very complicated issue. So she had to apologize already to the LGBTQ community after criticism of her past comments and work against gay rights resurfaced. This article does not get more specific on any of that. She had apologized previously, saying she's evolved on the issue. And yeah, well, all right, people change. People evolve on issues. That does happen. And that's actually a trait that I want in a leader of a country, is not to be so stubborn that you destroy everything around you just to feel like you're right. So, again, positives. I see Tulsi Gabbard as a very, very positive Democratic candidate, and I think a lot of other people are going to see that too once you see her on a stage. She's going to impress the shit out of you, I promise. Now we got Marianne Williamson. She's the best-selling author of spiritual books, so she's going to lose. Then we got Richard Ojeda, former Army paratrooper, West Virginia state senator, who lost a bid for U.S. House seat in November, announced he was going to run for president. I don't really understand that. I guess they think, well, the rest of the country must like me, just not the people who live near me. Beto O'Rourke is doing the exact same thing. And I skipped over him before because I do want to talk about just what an ass he appears to be. Doesn't he just kind of seem like an overeager schoolboy running for class treasurer? He doesn't seem presidential to me. And it doesn't have anything to do with youth or anything like that. There's just something about him. He just seems like he's running on excitement and doesn't have any of the actual information. So, I guess we'll see. They're going to parade him around for a while, and then as the outsider candidate, sort of the antithesis to Donald Trump, and he's going to be squashed like all of the antitheses to Donald Trump have been. So, looks like Richard Ojeda suspended his campaign January 25th, so he's actually not in. We've got Andrew Yang, New York City entrepreneur. He's running on a platform of universal basic income, Medicare for all, and a more humane form of capitalism. That's interesting. He's the son of Taiwanese immigrants, attended Exeter boarding school and the Ivy League. Okay, which Ivy League school? God, how hard is it to be a reporter in this country? You just do whatever you want, call it news. Consider me a reporter, everyone. I'm a reporter now because I just say whatever. I don't need the facts here. I just say things. So Andrew Yang, I don't know a lot about him. If you do want to know more about him, he did a long-form podcast with Joe Rogan. You probably get a pretty good feel for who he is. It was probably a week or two ago, so I would say check that out, possibly. I know I bring up Joe Rogan a good amount on here, but he is at the top of the podcast field. You got to pay respect. The man's the king. He's the king, and deservedly so. His interviews, it's like the only place right now where long-form, important discussions are taking place in a medium that is accessible to millions of people at any given time. And he's succeeding wildly from it, and he's doing very important work. And it's refreshing. It's optimistic because it's a break from the idiocy that you're surrounded by the rest of the day. So let's just look at this last guy here, John Delaney. Little-known former Maryland congressman, became the first candidate to officially enter the fray. He wasted no time doing so, announcing his intent to run in July 2017 in a Washington Post op-ed. So there's all that. And then Beto O'Rourke, I was going to go through what he believes because a lot of his beliefs seem to be at odds with his other beliefs, but we'll see. Listen, any man who loses a smaller election to Ted fucking Cruz is never going to be the president of this country. I'm sorry. Ted Cruz is pretty disrespected on both sides of the aisle. And unless you're a hardcore fundamentalist conservative Christian, you're probably not a huge Ted Cruz fan. Then again, there are, of course, that's not the archetype for every Ted Cruz supporter. One of my bosses, I would not call a fundamentalist Christian, mostly because he's Jewish. But he was conservative, and he was a Ted Cruz fan. He absolutely doesn't fit the mold of these crazy gun-toting cowboys in the Southwest. But Ted Cruz he's not a very popular guy, all in all, and Beto O'Rourke could not beat him in Texas. And even with the ad campaign where there was like the guy who was like, I would never vote for a man who shook hands with the man who said that his father had assassinated a president. It was like this whole thing, and there was something to that. Ted Cruz sort of licked the boots at Donald Trump, who accused Ted Cruz's father of helping to assassinate John F. Kennedy, which is such a crazy conspiracy theory that it's almost fun to believe. But still, Ted Cruz then sort of forgive and forget with that. And what kind of Texan man does that? I'll tell you, he doesn't. So, I mean, if you can't beat that, what chance do you have of beating Donald Trump? The answer is none. So Beto O'Rourke is going to burn out quick. I don't know if it's going to go out with a bang or a whimper. I don't know how far it's going to go. But it's going to be something. Yeah, just like I'm sure Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the reason why I don't think we need to pay all that much attention to her is because she's going to fizzle out. And here's my prediction for you. I guess this first episode will just be this first episode is an introduction and sort of a look at the 2020 Democratic candidates. That'll be our first political episode, and then we'll go into other things later. I might, I don't know. I kind of feel like I want to keep going. But I don't know if I should. An hour is pretty much long enough. But so many topics I want to talk about. I want to rant about and yell about. Maybe I will. I don't know. I lost my train of thought, though. Hold on. Okay, so what I was trying to say, I had to go back and listen. I was trying to say why I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is not a serious threat. The only reason she is a serious threat is because of millennials who don't have a firm grasp on politics or economics, who are supporting her, or a firm grasp on history either. And anyone who is a strong Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez supporter, if you want to come on this show and talk to me about that, I would be more than happy to. It's an invite to anybody. I don't care. If you really think you have a strong case for her, let's do it. Let's hash it out. We'll hash it out right over the airwaves. So, but the reason she's going to fizzle out is because she is a young millennial, a young affluent millennial, and young affluent millennials. If you're going to profile them, the thing about them is they run almost entirely on emotion. They also think all of their emotions are justified, do not need to be explained to anybody, and do not need to be controlled because they are naturally occurring emotions in them. And they think that all needs to be respected. But in the real world, where that kind of thing doesn't exist, in reality, I know we've created this strange bubble of fantasy, and it's starting to seem like reality is changing, but no, it's not. Reality is not changing. People are trying to change reality, and they're doing it poorly. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez being one of those people. She is going to have a meltdown / tantrum in very public fashion, because that's what happens when millennials who run on their emotions, who refuse to attempt to control their emotions, get a little irked in public. They are going to stamp their feet, cry, cross their arms, make a big deal about something, get all confused about what they're trying to do, and eventually go, I don't need to do this. And then they're going to fall back on some part of identity. Because identity politics is the ultimate shield against having to have an actual adult conversation with another human being. To fall back and go, I don't need to do this because of this thing that has nothing to do with anything. No, that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Mark my words. We'll see. We'll see it happen. This is a Mike Stradamus prediction. So, yeah, I guess we're going to leave the politics here for now. I do want to talk. I wanted to talk about other people. I mean, in later episodes, I definitely want to talk about Roger Stone. I would like to talk a little bit about possibly Paul Manafort, Michael Cohen, those sort of legal proceedings. I want to look at the Mueller report when that's published. I think that's going to be fascinating, and you know it's going to be misconstrued by both sides of the aisle. It's going to happen. I want to take a deeper dive into what Beto O'Rourke's all about at some point in the future. I want to look at, let's see. Oh, there's so many stuff. I want to look at this college admissions scandal, and I really want to do that kind of soon. You know what? I'll do it now. We'll end with the college admissions scandal, and basically what I want to say about that. I jotted down a few notes when it happened that I wanted to bring up. What I've put here is no. Let me start with this one. So the college admissions scandal, in which celebrities and wealthy people were using or were basically bribing colleges to allow their children to go in. Their children who, it seems like a lot of them are just dunces completely. Maybe not completely, but there's that hilarious video of Lori Loughlin's daughter going around, because I guess she was video blogging, saying stuff like, I just like to be here for the parties. I don't even care about school. You guys know all that. And like she potentially took an Ivy League college spot away from maybe the guy who would have cured cancer. Let's make it the most extreme thing we can to really sort of amplify the outrage that should be here for this. Basically, I mean, we all kind of knew this was happening. I guess it's validating in a way to have it confirmed by law enforcement. And they have arrested people. They're releasing them on bail and bond and all this nonsense. My takeaways from this are, one, I mean, it's pessimistic. And it has to be pessimistic because if you understand one thing about major institutions is that they're going to fight tooth and nail to avoid changing from the successful way they were operating before. All right, I had to stop recording for a moment, but I'm back now and slightly quieter because I don't have a studio and I'm in my house. So basically, what I was saying about the college admission scandal is that nothing is going to change. At the end of the day, after all, they parade around all these people and they say that they're very naughty and they're gonna, take away certain things and threaten them with fines and all this nonsense. Nothing's going to change. The colleges are going to go right back into what they were doing before, and they're not going to get in trouble. And if you don't believe me, the fucking banks did it, and they are a much larger, more important institution to this country than the colleges. They make mistakes. They're seen as too important to the fabric of society. They are not adequately punished, and they continue doing whatever the hell they want. It happens all the time, and it's going to happen again here. So the way I see this progressing is people are going to sue the colleges, which has already started. The colleges are going to look to supplement their lost income from these settlements by conducting the same style of business they were doing before. And it goes to that sort of idea of, what is it, like after a plane crashes, the safest airline to fly the next day is the one that crashed because they're going to make absolutely sure it doesn't happen again. I mean, maybe that's not the best example in light of the Boeing 787 MAX 8 situation, but I digress. These colleges they're not going to change. They're going to continue doing what they're doing again, and they're going to have more incentive to do it because they need to make up the lost money from the settlements. Now, that's what I see with that. And I guess I'll also point out that I wrote down the American virtue is overcompensation. The colleges are going to learn the exact wrong lesson from all of this if they learn any lesson at all. Instead of cutting off the wealth-based privileges and putting everyone back on equal ground, they're going to go overboard in lifting up the underprivileged. So the high-up people are still going to be getting whatever they want, but they're going to elevate the underprivileged people through scholarships or whatever they want to do to try to build up some good press and say that, look, we're making them equal. And the people who are going to get nothing are the people in the middle. Not underprivileged, but also can't afford to bribe their way into school. Those people are going to get nothing, and everyone else is going to go up higher. And that's what happens a lot. Now, I feel like it would be strange if I didn't mention as a final point, I know that was supposed to be my final thing, but what's it called? The mass shooting in New Zealand. It's very sad. It's very sad. I don't have a lot to say about it other than I'm pretty disgusted by the reactions of a lot of people. I don't understand how anyone in their right mind blames American Republicans on a mass shooting that happened on a different continent. I don't know. Gun violence doesn't gun violence somewhere else in the world, it doesn't mean that America is somehow involved. It just doesn't. And it doesn't matter if somebody claims that they support that's the other thing. If somebody who is just a deviant, just a real piece of shit evil person like the shooter in New Zealand, just because they say they're a supporter of someone doesn't mean the thing they support is a supporter of them. Does that make sense? And I'll give you an example. You, the listener, let's say you create this new restaurant, right? And it's a great restaurant and people love it. And then David Duke walks in and decides it's his favorite restaurant. And David Duke and all David Duke's racist friends come in and they use the restaurant. Does that make you and your restaurant racist? No, it doesn't. Maybe that's not a great example because if it's a private business, you could borrow them from it. But what I'm trying to say is just because you create something or you believe something and then other subversive, deviant elements come in to support you, doesn't mean you support them also. You don't need them. You don't want them. But you can't stop somebody from liking you or, doing that kind of stuff. It's strange to think that we're all accountable for everyone else's thoughts and actions. Especially when no one is calling for any of these things. It's one thing to call for something, and it's another thing for somebody to just claim that they are your supporter. It's weird. It's weird. And I think people buy into that a little too much. But the thing that really disturbs me about this shooting and all these shootings, and I'm talking aside from the actual massacre itself, it's disturbing beyond words. The fact that these things are still happening it's frightening. And it used to be said back at the radio station, there was a guy, Andrew Newman. Hey, Andrew, if you're listening. And he used to say, when these things would happen, he used to say that you're lying to yourself if you think that you're safe when you go out in public now. You're just lying to yourself because that's sort of the state of the world we're in now. I mean, he was talking more about our country, but it's the state of the world. It's so crazy now that if you go outside, there's a chance you could be shot and killed by just some maniac. That's the reality of the world we're living in. But so aside from the horrors of that stuff, what's it called? People making it about themselves from a distance is disgusting, in my opinion. So I wrote here also, after I saw it, like every massacre, no matter where in the world, people are making it all about themselves. As much attention as they can get for extending prayers, naive and incorrect socio-political statements, and attacking people online at random, all for attention, for their own personal attention, so that they can be seen as somewhat of a side hero of the story. You know, somebody who is virtuous and is going to root out all of the evils in the dark and stuff, but just doing it by swinging wildly at people on Twitter. And also making it seem like their sympathies are somehow, I don't know, going to change things. It's very strange. It's just, I'm not saying don't be sympathetic, don't be empathetic, don't post things, but stop making it about yourselves. It's not about you. It's about the people in New Zealand. It's about what they're going through. It's about trying to prevent these things from happening again. It's not about what you think or what you feel. Stop now. And that's all I have to say about that. Yep. I guess that'll about do it for this first episode. Pretty heavy on the politics. Sorry, everyone. But this will be, I don't know. I don't want to call this red version or blue version now that I think about it, because those are the political parties. So, I don't know. I don't know which one we'll call this. Maybe I'll do a poll. Should the political episode be red version or blue version? And then I'll do the regular one later in the week. Maybe try to get a guest. And we'll just chat about whatever nonsense we're thinking of. Yeah, let me know what you think, everybody. Comment, like, subscribe, do whatever you got to do. And please don't take me out of context or anything like that. Nothing I've said here is coming from a malicious place. I don't want anything bad to happen, I guess, towards any group or any individual. I have strong political views, which are by no means subversive or anything like that. I'm just trying to get my opinion out there in this sea of shouting voices of every opinion under the sun. So I guess here's mine. And if you do have any more questions or you want to say anything or something like that, please feel free to send them to me. I will read every single one of them. I will try to respond to every one of them. And yeah, And maybe you convince me that I'm wrong. I'm very open to new information. I'm not, again, I'm not unconditional when it comes to sort of socio-political and economic ideas. If you can show me a better way, I'm going to want to take the better way, obviously, because I'm a rational being. So, yeah, hopefully not too many people were offended. My whole point really is I don't care if you're offended, but, at the end of the day, you don't want people. The point is not to offend. So, with that, thank you for listening. Hopefully you made it this far. You didn't turn it off out of anger. Yeah, thanks again, everybody, and I will probably talk to you again sometime later in the week. Thanks.